We spend our whole lives trying not to look stupid. But what if being a fool, yep, the person who messes up, speaks out, and laughs at themselves, is actually the key to living a real, happy life? What if the class clown is the closest thing we've got to a hero? Let's be honest, every school has one. That kid who's somehow both the loudest and the most lovable. They'll walk into class late with a Slurpee, trip over absolutely nothing, then launch into a rant about how cereal is technically soup. They say what everyone's thinking but too scared to say, and yeah, sometimes it's dumb. But it's also kind of genius. We laugh at them. We roll our eyes. We even hit them with the classic, "Bro, what is wrong with you?" But secretly, we admire the heck out of them. Why? Because they don't play the game. While everyone else is busy faking smiles, chasing validation, and spiraling over a B+ like it's the end of the world, the fool is just vibing. They don't care if it's cool. They don't care if they're liked. They just are. And there's power in that. See, we've been taught that life's a race. Grind, hustle, get the grades, build your resume before you even finish puberty. But the fool? They're not sprinting. They're skipping through the chaos, humming, off-key, and somehow finding joy where the rest of us see stress. And guess what? That playfulness? It's not a weakness. It's a survival skill. Studies actually show that people who can laugh at themselves, joke around, and not take things too seriously tend to be more emotionally balanced, creative, and socially connected. Basically, being a little goofy might be the healthiest thing you can do in a world that treats burnout like a badge of honor. But here's where it hits different. While we're all out here trying to be perfect and put together, the fool is showing us the one thing we've lost: freedom. The freedom to mess up, to be weird. To try something and fail without deleting your entire social media existence afterward. The fool gives us permission to stop performing and start actually living. But don't get it twisted. This isn't just some quirky friend group dynamic or class clown stereotype. The idea of the fool is ancient, powerful, and a whole lot more legendary than you'd ever expect. And once we dive into where the fool really comes from, things start getting wild. You thought the fool started with your cousin doing Fortnite dances at Thanksgiving? Nah. This archetype is ancient, like before plumbing ancient. Long before memes, comedy specials, or your friend who sends voice notes that sound like full podcasts, the fool already existed. They were rocking weird outfits, cracking jokes at kings, and somehow surviving, even thriving in some of the most serious, powerful places on Earth. Take medieval court jesters. These weren't just clowns juggling for nobles, they were the only ones allowed to roast the king to his face and live. That's not a joke. They'd show up in floppy hats, mock the crown, call out corruption, and everyone would laugh. Because if they didn't, it might get real awkward real fast. In a world where saying the wrong thing could get you literally unalived, the fool was untouchable. Why? Because they wore the mask of humor. They could drop truth bombs, start revolutions with punchlines, and somehow get away with it. Even Shakespeare knew what was up. His fools weren't just comic relief, they were philosophers in disguise. In King Lear, it's the jester who speaks the deepest truths, while the actual royalty are too busy being dramatic and emotionally unstable. Classic. And get this. Socrates, one of the biggest names in philosophy, basically branded himself as a fool. He ran around Athens asking annoying questions like, "What is justice?" until everyone was either inspired or deeply irritated. He even said, "I know that I know nothing," which sounds dumb, until you realize it's the smartest way to avoid becoming the kind of person who thinks quoting Nietzsche makes them deep. The fool isn't dumb. He's unfiltered. He's the one who sees the emperor's new clothes and goes, "Yo, this man is naked," while everyone else claps politely. But that's just the start, because the fool isn't just about comedy or ancient vibes. He's about something bigger: truth without ego, courage without armor, and authenticity in a world that punishes it. And the more society tries to hide its flaws, the more fools show, up to call them out. But what happens when the fool doesn't even realize how powerful his truth is? That's where things start to get dangerous, in ways you'd never expect. Let's be honest, most people are fake. Okay, maybe not fake, but we all play roles. Online, it's filters and carefully curated captions. In school, it's act smart, don't say the wrong thing. At home, pretend everything's fine even if your brain's doing parkour off anxiety walls. But the fool doesn't do any of that. He blurts out what everyone's thinking, but no one dares to say. The awkward truth, the unpopular opinion, the, wait, did he just say, that? Moment that makes everyone freeze, and then secretly exhale, because someone finally broke the tension. See, fools don't overthink. They don't run their thoughts through 10 layers of PR training. They don't care if what they say is going to get clipped, canceled, or turned into a passive-aggressive group chat thread. They just speak. Raw, honest, unfiltered. And here's the part that hits deep. Sometimes that foolish honesty is exactly what people need. You ever been in a room where everyone's pretending like something isn't a big deal, but it is? Like the friend group's falling apart, the teacher's clearly spiraling, someone's hurting, but everyone's too scared to be real about it? That's when the fool steps up. Not because they mean to be profound, but because they're too genuine to fake it. They'll drop a joke that cuts straight through the awkwardness. They'll call someone out, but with a grin. They'll say the thing that breaks the silence and makes people laugh and think and breathe. That's not just comedy. That's emotional CPR. And here's the twist. People act like fools are harmless, but they're not. They're dangerous in the best way possible, because the fool isn't afraid of consequences. They'll question authority, roast hypocrisy, and challenge the entire system with a dumb grin and a one-liner. That's why kings kept fools close, because deep down they knew. The only person who could keep them humble was the one who didn't care about power at all. And in today's world, where everything is image and influence and optics, fools are needed more than ever. But sometimes that same honesty becomes a curse, because not everyone wants the truth. And when the fool keeps speaking it, that's when things get dark. Really dark. Okay, here's the part nobody talks about. We all love the fool, the class clown, the friend who always keeps the mood light, even when everyone's stressed. The one who'll make a dumb joke during a breakup just to make you smile through your tears. They're the MVP of any group chat. But what if I told you, sometimes the funniest person in the room is also the saddest? It's called the sad clown paradox. The idea that people who make others laugh the most are often the ones who carry the heaviest pain. Not just a little stress. We're talking rage, grief, anxiety, all buried under a layer of, haha, I'm fine. Think about it. Humor is a shield, a survival tool. If you're constantly worried you won't be taken seriously, or that people won't accept the real you, what do? You turn pain into punchlines. You control the narrative. If they're gonna laugh at you anyway, you make sure it's your joke. Ever notice how some comedians have the darkest life stories? Robin Williams, Bo Burnham. Even Jim Carrey once said, I wish everyone could get rich and famous so they'd realize that's not the answer. And he said it with a smile. That hits different, because the fool isn't just the life of the party. Sometimes he's the only one keeping it together, while quietly falling apart. And it doesn't stop with celebrities. You've seen this at school. The kid who never seems serious, always goofing off, always down to make the teacher crack a smile. You'd never guess they cry at night, or they feel invisible, or they're exhausted from being the funny one 24/7. Because when everyone expects you to be the comic relief, you start to feel like you're not allowed to be anything else. And here's where it turns even darker. That mask, it can become permanent. You forget how to take it off. And underneath, the real you, your emotions, your pain, your truth, starts to rot in silence. This is when the fool can slip into something else, something twisted, something broken. That's where the Joker comes in, not just a villain, but the ultimate symbol of what happens when society laughs too hard and listens too little. A joke stops being funny when it's the only way someone knows how to cry. But here's the thing. Fools don't stay broken, because even in their darkest moments, they've still got one thing left that nobody can touch: hope. They still believe people can laugh even if it's through tears, and that maybe, just maybe, truth wrapped in a joke is the only way people will hear it. And if the fool still dares to speak, to keep going. Where exactly does that journey lead? Let's just say, it's not what you expect. You thought this was just about clowns and class jokers? Nah. The fool isn't just some guy tripping over a backpack and yelling YOLO for laughs. He's actually the OG protagonist of one of the oldest spiritual journeys in human history. Seriously, his story is so iconic, it's literally the first card in the tarot deck, card number 0, the Fool, but he's not nothing, he's everything. 0 doesn't mean empty, it means infinite. The Fool is the start of the journey and the end. He's standing on a cliff about to step off, no idea what's coming, and he's smiling. Why? Because he's not afraid. He's curious. He trusts the adventure. And yeah, there's a little dog tugging at his leg like, "Yo, my guy, maybe don't fall off that mountain." But the fool doesn't care. He's in it for the vibes, and that's exactly why he wins. This is what mystics call the fool's journey, a metaphor for life itself. You begin clueless, unprepared, probably wearing Crocs and carrying emotional baggage wrapped in denial. But you go anyway. You step into the unknown. You take risks. You fail. You cry. You grow. You transform. This is every coming-of-age movie ever. It's Frodo leaving the Shire. It's Moana sailing past the reef. It's Spider-Man messing up and still choosing to fight. The fool starts the journey with nothing but blind faith. No plan, no map, just the audacity to try, and along the way, he faces trials, monsters, awkward parties, maybe a breakup that turns into a playlist spiral. He falls. A lot. But every fall teaches him something. Every cringe moment brings him closer to something real. And here's the crazy part. The goal isn't to stop being a fool. It's to own it. To realize the fool was the hero all along. Because the world tells you, don't take risks. Play it safe. Get it right the first time. But the fool's like, nah, I'll fall off the cliff, break a few bones, and still get up dancing. And in the end, he comes full circle. He doesn't stop being curious or weird or wild. He just becomes wise enough to know that being foolish was never the opposite of smart. It was the first step toward it. Think about it. Every person you admire, whether it's an artist, a visionary, a disruptor, they all started out being called crazy, irrational, too much. They were fools until they weren't. Because somewhere, along the way, that foolish leap became a legacy. And just when you think the journey ends, it starts all over again. But what if this wasn't just a story in a deck of cards or a movie script? What if the fool's journey was actually yours? Here's the million-dollar question. Are you brave enough to be the fool? And no, I don't mean acting like a clown just for clout. I mean, are you willing to look ridiculous for something real? Are you ready to take a leap without knowing if there's a net, or if people are going to laugh when you fall? Because here's the truth, no one posts on Instagram. Being a fool takes guts. It takes guts to raise your hand when you don't know the answer. To say, I don't get it, when everyone else is nodding along, pretending they do. It takes guts to laugh at your mistakes instead of hiding them. To wear what you actually like instead of what's safe. To follow your weird dream even if your parents, teachers, and half the internet say, that's not realistic. The fool dares to do what everyone else avoids. Be seen. That takes more courage than acting cool ever will. And yeah, you'll get judged. People will roll their eyes. Some might even call you cringe, dramatic, or doing too much. But ask yourself, do those people actually matter? Are they living fully? Or are they just scared to take their own leap? The fool doesn't wait for approval. He doesn't need permission to be real. He just is, loud, flawed, passionate, alive. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not that brave, guess what? That doubt, that hesitation, that's your inner fool knocking, saying, hey, maybe it's time. Because deep down, we all have that voice, the one that wants to try, that wants to create, that wants to say, screw it, I'm doing this. But most people bury it. They bury it under, what if I fail? Or, what will people think? They trade authenticity for acceptance. And in the process, they shrink. They become spectators in their own life, not the fool. The fool steps into the spotlight, not to perform, but to live. Even if his voice cracks. Even if he trips. Even if no one claps, because he knows something that most people forget. You only get one shot at this thing called life. And it's better to look foolish living it fully than to play it safe and regret the silence. So, are you ready to stop asking, what if I mess up? And start asking, what if I don't try? Because that's the question that changes everything. And once you start thinking like that, you're not just becoming the fool, you're becoming unstoppable. Let's get real for a second. This world, it's kind of broken. We're living in a time where everyone's trying to look like they've got it all figured out. Perfect grades, perfect skin, perfect opinions curated down to the emoji. Everyone's obsessed with image, with getting it right. With being liked, not just online, but in real life too. But here's the thing. No one says out loud. It's exhausting. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we stop pretending. Maybe the world doesn't need more perfection. Maybe it needs more people who are willing to be honest. Enter the fool. The fool doesn't follow the script. He doesn't do things just because that's how it's done. He asks the awkward questions. He breaks the unspoken rules. He tells the joke that makes the whole room stop, then laugh, then think. He doesn't pretend everything's fine when it's not. He doesn't fake confidence just to impress people who don't matter. He shows up messy, raw, real, and guess what? That realness is powerful because we live in a world that's scared of truth, scared of feelings, scared of saying, I don't know, or I messed up, or this doesn't make sense. We live in a world that rewards silence over honesty, appearances over authenticity. But the fool cuts through all that. He brings a kind of chaotic clarity, like a glitch in the matrix. He reminds people that you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. That you can change the world by being yourself, even if that means being weird, loud, emotional, sensitive, rebellious, or, yeah, totally ridiculous. The fool doesn't blend in. He breaks the system just by existing outside of it. And here's the kicker. Every society that thrives, that grows, that evolves, it always has its fools. Not because they're comic relief, but because they're the ones who shake things up, who speak when no one else will, who challenge authority, tradition, and blind obedience, not to cause chaos, but to wake people up. Fools are like emotional defibrillators. They jolt us out of the trance of going through the motions. They remind us that joy is not a distraction, it's medicine. That laughter isn't an escape, it's a rebellion. That play, creativity, and imperfection aren't childish, they're human. And in a world that's drowning in stress, division, and pressure to conform, fools don't just survive, they liberate. So, the question is no longer why be a fool, it's why aren't more people brave enough to try? So after everything, after the stories, the laughter, the myths, and the madness, there's only one truth left. The fool is you. Not the fake you that smiles when you're crumbling inside. Not the version of you chasing likes, followers, or someone else's approval. Not the polished, filtered, respectable version you think the world wants to see. The real you. The part that dreams too big. That says the wrong thing. That cries at dumb movies and laughs during serious moments. That asks questions no one wants to answer. That screws up, tries again, and refuses to quit. The fool lives in the part of you that's wild, honest, and free. The problem? Most people bury that part. They kill it with fear, starve it with shame, replace it with what's acceptable. And then they wonder why life feels fake, why they're bored, burned out, or just numb, but not you. Because now you know. You've seen the journey. You've felt the truth. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to be the one who stops pretending. Who dares to be real. Who takes the leap, trips, laughs it off, and keeps going anyway. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Because in a world full of people playing it safe, the fool is the one who actually lives. So the next time someone calls you weird, dramatic, naive, or yes, a fool, don't flinch. Smile, because they don't get it yet. But you do.